Well, hello. I'm back for more chair chat. In this video, I'm going to pick up where I left off talking about 42nd and Mantua Avenue, or Mantua Street, as it was called. I probably lived there until I was about 8 or so. So there were a lot of things that really made a mark on my life, in this particular house. For starters, we lived up on the third floor, and my brothers and sisters and my mom, we all slept in the same bed, And so anyway, what I'd like to do is I'm going to tell you about my uncles, because they definitely made a major impact in my life and our lives. When I say our lives, I mean the family, and particularly, the boys, because there's myself and my brother, but we have cousins. My mother's twin had about the same arrangement of kids, down to the fact that there was 2 boys and a girl, and then the other sister, same arrangement. It's funny how that worked out. But anyway, there's 2 uncles, and one was Uncle Harold. Uncle Harold. We feared my Uncle Harold, just feared him. He wasn't mean or anything, but he just commanded a certain amount of respect, not only from the kids, but everybody that knew him. He was a fighter, a boxer. He did that, and he had quite a good reputation for being a fighter, and maybe that had something to do with it. He also, spent time in jail, and maybe that had a little bit too. Oh boy, he was in jail, so he must have done something. But anyway, that's my Uncle Harold, and so one of the things that he would do with us, determined to make men, out of us boys, that would be my brother, my cousins, is okay. So between the living room and the dining room, there's an archway, all right? And he would take us and he would make us hang from the top of the archway. So there we are, grasping on, to the top, the piece of wood, on top there. And he'd just leave us there, just leave us there. It wasn't like he sat down, got in the chair and looked for amusement. He just left us there, went about his own business. So somebody would end up crying because, it seemed like a far way down, from hanging up there and falling down. So somebody was crying. And eventually we'd fall, we'd fall off the archway down on the floor. I do recall that. Somebody was amused. Another thing that he would do is he would make us fight each other. And now that was something that I hated that, fighting. So you're fighting your cousins. And that was certainly an indication of the fact that I was kind of always one of these nice, fair people, which doesn't fare very well when it comes to street fighting, or, maybe fighting in general. And what I mean by that is, so now you're fighting. Now, I had some advantages, some instincts for the fact that, one, I have long arms. That was an advantage, for me. And, I was kind of good at seeing things coming. And, I certainly had some instincts, no doubt about that. The problem is that if I got somebody, one of my cousins or somebody like in a corner, right? I would, oh, you're in a corner, you can't do anything. So I'd back off, let them out of the corner. Let's finish fighting. All right. Well, my cousins, I don't know that, well, no, they were much too smart for that. If they had me in the corner, they're going to whoop my butt. And I'm like, hey, you can't do that. That's not fair. They didn't care. They just would just sit there and just beat your butt anyway. God, I hated that. Another thing very interesting about my uncle is he was part of this. It was famous. I had no idea that it was actually really true, but boy, was it true. It was a group, a crime syndicate called the Black Mafia, a Philadelphia gang. And a lot of his friends, his best friends, like the guy who started it. And my uncle was involved in that. Now, a lot of that stuff is hush hush. I don't know what these guys did, racketeering, crime, burglary. If it's crime, that's what they did. I think they pissed off maybe some people in South Philly, the Italian mafia down there, and things got, it got really strange. What's interesting is, I got just a little curious and I just looked it up, before, sitting before you now. And there's like movies about the Black Mafia. I'm like, are you kidding me? And one thing that I do recall was in Geneseo in the 90s, I go to Walmart and Walmart at the time, you could buy these DVDs, there'd be a variety of movies on one DVD, Ninja Cowboys, old series and all this stuff. And this particular time, there was Black Mafia on one of those DVD things inside Walmart DVD. And I'm like, and I look at the cover and I'm like, I know these guys. These are my uncle's friends. These were the guys that were at the Mantua bar on the weekends, and we would always ask money, from these guys, and when they would walk around, they had the processed hair, and of course, their pockets were always filled with change. How do we know that? Because when they would walk, their pockets would jingle. You ask for money, and most of the time, you got it. So my uncle was quite a character. And now my other uncle, Uncle Tom, he was also a very interesting guy, much more introverted than Uncle Harold. And he just made us laugh, just laugh. God, I love him. He was so funny. And he was also, my mother would describe him as being a hustler. Not a hustler in a bad way, but just doing anything for money, anything that he could for money. He worked at a pickle factory or something like that, and he would always, he also drank a lot. I mean, he was always drunk when we saw him, but this was to our advantage because if he had money, he would give it to us. Change we're talking about. So, he would come home always smelling like pickles, which kind of stale pickles. The pickles have, if you work in stores like that, they got a particular smell. You mix that with the fact that you've been drinking a hell of a lot. Boy, what a smell, that is. But, that's what he did. He also had other things that would happen where the house that we lived in was, in the back of that house was the railroad tracks. And there was a big bridge. I mean, we're talking like this was big. Not just this little train going by a single track. I mean, we're talking, maybe 4 trains, different sets of tracks and stuff. And there would always be something in the backyard, boxes of just stuff. In one case, there were like boxes of pocketbooks. Pocketbooks. So, we're curious kids, open up pocketbook. What are we going to do with the pocketbooks? So we couldn't do anything with that. I just remember they were, these straw, pocketbooks. Maybe my sister had some fun playing dress up or whatever, but, we boys, we couldn't do anything with it. So we didn't mess with it. Another time, there was, you remember, there's perfume that they have those little balls on them. It's mainly famous from, probably the early, I think of like the 1700s, but 100 years ago, more actually. They have the little balls on the perfume and they squeeze it. They still have those things. I've seen them around. But they would make these toys for kids that would have those little balls on them. I guess they would push air to make something on foil air, and these little creatures that they were attached to, look like they're jumping, So I guess that was amusing, and so we got a hold of that, and then everybody in the neighborhood had one because we gave it to everybody we knew, right? Another time, probably the best time, was there were boxes of water guns. Now, the water guns were these little plastic, cheap-looking laser pistol things. You fill it with water, and it was just a water gun. But everybody in the neighborhood had one, courtesy us. That's for sure. We got into trouble for that because, we were shooting up everybody. We're getting water everywhere. And boy, they didn't, like that. And I think my brother might have been kind of an entrepreneur. Somebody was, because they would take these water guns, sell them for like a penny. And, then you can go to the store, which was, we're talking Four Corners, right? So there's the grocery store on the corner there. You go over there and buy yourself a Pepsi for 15 cents. Or actually, I remember it was actually 16 cents. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to stop there because there's so much to say, and it's so easy for these videos to be very long. So I'm going to stop there, and I will continue with more stories later. So for now, I will say have a good evening. Bye.